Imagine the coldest, most desolate place on Earth, an endless expanse of white bait, where the wind howls like a ghost and the temperature plummets to unimaginable lows. This is Antarctica, the setting for one of the most epic and tragic tales of exploration ever told. The race to the South Pole. This wasn't just a journey. It was a brutal, head-to-head competition between two men, two nations, and two radically different philosophies. A clash of titans that would end in ultimate glory for one, and a frozen, heartbreaking death for the other. In one corner, we have Roald Amundsen, the Norwegian Viking of the ice to season, polar explorer. He was pragmatic, meticulous, and ruthlessly efficient. He had spent years living with the Inuit, learning their survival secrets. His plan was a masterclass in polar strategy. In the other corner, representing the might of the British Empire, was Captain Robert Falcon Scott, a Royal Navy officer. He was brave, stoic, and deeply committed to the ideals of sportsmanship and national honor. For Scott, how you won was just as important as winning itself. The starting gun fired in late 1911. Both teams launched their expeditions from the edge of the Antarctic continent, heading into a vast, unknown wilderness. Their goal, to be the first humans to stand at the bottom of the world, the geographic South Pole. Amundsen's approach was pure, cold logic. His greatest weapon was a team of over 100 powerful Greenland sled dogs. These weren't pets, they were engines of the ice. They pulled the sleds, loaded with supplies, at a remarkable pace. Amundsen meticulously planned his route, setting up supply depots at precise intervals. Every detail was calculated for maximum speed and efficiency. He and his four companions dressed in Inuit-style furs, which were far superior to the British woolens in the extreme cold. They traveled light and fast, living off the land in the most brutal way imaginable. His plan had a grim, but effective, component. As the sleds became lighter from consuming supplies, weaker dogs would be culled and fed to the stronger dogs and the men themselves. It was a brutal calculus of survival, but in the unforgiving Antarctic, sentimentality was a luxury he could not afford. Meanwhile, Scott's expedition was a study in contrast. It was larger, more complex, and ultimately, fatally flawed. Scott was skeptical of dogs, viewing them as difficult to handle and somehow unsporting. Instead, he placed his faith in a combination of motorized sledges, hardy Siberian ponies, and good old-fashioned manpulling. The experimental motor sledges broke down almost immediately in the extreme cold. The ponies, beautiful and strong, were ill-suited for the Antarctic. Their hooves sank into the deep snow, they struggled with the diet, and they sweated, their sweat then freezing on their coats. One by one, they collapsed and had to be shot, leaving the men with a soul-crushing task. After the last of the support animals were gone, Scott and his chosen polar party of 4 other men were left to haul the heavy sleds themselves. They strapped on harnesses and became beasts of burden, pulling hundreds of pounds across the ice, day after grueling day. It was an act of incredible endurance and courage, a testament to their physical and mental fortitude, but it was also agonizingly slow. They were burning through calories and energy at an alarming rate, falling further and further behind a schedule that had little room for error. Their journey became a slow, ponderous march against the elements. While Scott's team toiled, Amundsen's team was flying across the polar plateau. Their skis glided over the snow, the dogs pulled with tireless strength, and the miles simply melted away. They were a lean, mean, polar-conquering machine on December 14, 1911. After a journey of 57 days, Roald Amundsen and his men arrived. They stood at 90 degrees south, the bottom of the world. The sun circled endlessly in the sky above a flat, featureless plain of white. They had done it. Amundsen planted the Norwegian flag, a moment of quiet, calculated triumph. They had won the race. After a few days of taking measurements to confirm their position, they packed up their small tent, which they named Polheim, and began the journey home, leaving the flag and a letter for Scott inside. A little over a month later, on January 17, 1912, Captain Scott and his 4 companions, exhausted, frostbitten, and running low on supplies, finally reached their goal. Their spirits lifted as they believed they were about to claim the ultimate prize for their country. But then, they saw it. A small, dark speck on the horizon. As they drew closer, their hearts sank. It was a tent, and flapping in the relentless polar wind was the Norwegian flag. Imagine that feeling, the utter devastation. To have endured so much, to have pushed your body and soul to the absolute limit, to have reached the most remote and inaccessible place on Earth, only to find you were second. Scott's diary entry from that day is one of the most poignant in the history of exploration. The pole, yes, but under circumstances which sledge-numb all feeling and disappointment. Great God, this is an awful place and terrible enough for us to have labored to it. Without the reward of priority, the discovery crushed their morale. The prize was gone. Now, all that remained was the 800-mile journey back to their base. A journey they were ill-equipped to make. The return trip was a nightmare. The weather turned against them, with unusually low temperatures and relentless blizzards. One of the men, Edgar Evans, suffered a fall and his condition rapidly deteriorated. Then, Lawrence Oakes, his feet severely frostbitten, and knowing he was slowing the others down, uttered his now famous last words, "I am just going outside and maybe sometime." He walked out of the tent into a blizzard, sacrificing himself in a final, desperate attempt to save his friends. But it was no use. The remaining three, Scott, Wilson, and Bowers, were trapped by a ferocious blizzard just 11 miles from their next supply depot, a depot that held the food and fuel that could have saved them. They were too weak to go on. Huddled in their tent, with the wind shrieking outside, Robert Falcon Scott wrote his final letters. He wrote to his wife, his mother, and the public, defending his decisions and describing the courage of his men. His last diary entry reads, "For God's sake, look after our people." Their frozen bodies were discovered by a search party 8 months later. Their story of heroic failure and stoic sacrifice became a legend, eclipsing Amundsen's victory in the public's imagination for decades. So, who was the true hero? The pragmatic survivor who achieved his goal with brutal efficiency, or the romantic hero who failed but did so with incredible courage and honor? The race to the South Pole wasn't just about geography. It was a profound story about human ambition, the unforgiving power of nature, and the different paths we choose in the face of impossible odds. It reminds us that sometimes the stories of those who do make it back are the ones that echo the loudest through history. Thanks for watching. If you're fascinated by tales of exploration and be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more stories from the edge of the world. See you next time.